Hello my beautiful friends, it's Amanda here, and today we're talking about a brand new palette from Klarity Cosmetics. This is the Bloom palette. I was so excited to order this one. It launched in early February and I'd had my eye on it for a while ever since she started sneak peeking the packaging, and I knew it was going to be this really rich jewel tone color story, which it is. I'm a big fan of Klarity Cosmetics palettes. Their So Mermazing palette from last year was one of my favorites. I don't even like pastel palettes, and I absolutely went crazy for that palette. It was in my best of the year palette roundup, so when I saw that there was a jewel tone palette joining the family, I knew that I had to get my greedy little paws on it, which I did. So I ordered this myself. Klarity doesn't send me any PR. These palettes are pretty pricey. So the retail price is $48. These palettes are just absolutely massive. As you can see, this whole palette is bigger than my head. These have the really, really large 37mm pans. The shipping made this a lot more expensive too. I can't imagine what it would be like for an international customer to purchase this, because Klarity only offers free shipping over $100, and I was just picking up this palette, so I think the shipping was an additional 10 bucks on top of an almost $50 palette. So this thing was pretty pricey, but obviously not so expensive to keep me from purchasing it, because once it was in my cart, it was over. According to the product details on the website, this palette is handmade, completely vegan and cruelty-free, fragrance-free, and 37mm pans. Like I said, the really, really big pan size. Something to note right up front, this says pressed pigment palette. This does not say eyeshadow palette. These are pressed pigments, which means they are very intense, very, very opaque, and a lot of these shades really, really leave a stain. And it's not always the shades you would think, because I think most of us know that more red pigments tend to stain, but this matte blue is by far the worst offender in this palette. I've done a lot of swatching and a lot of playing with this palette over the last few days, and this matte blue is the worst stainer for me, followed then by the more bright pink. Since these are pressed pigments, I just recommend doing some patch testing to see how you react to them. Some people have an allergy to certain pigments, so it's always better to find that out with a patch test on your arm versus on your eyelid. And you can also see what your level of staining is. A little bit of primer should help with that. But if you want some more info about pigments and patch testing, I'll link my ColourPop wine collection video down in the description box, and I go a little bit more in depth about different eye safety warnings, why they're there, how I recommend patch testing, all that fun stuff. So let's take a close-up look at this Bloom palette now. Here's a close-up look at the palette packaging. We have all of this gorgeous, rich, colorful foliage. Did I paint my nails purple to match this palette? Probably, because that's who I am as a person. This is the outer sleeve. So on the back of the sleeve, we have the ingredients for the foiled and matte pressed pigment shadows and all of the company info, all of that good stuff. This is just on the sleeve. So when we take the palette out and we look at the back of the actual palette, it will be completely blank. So make sure you keep the sleeve around if you are an ingredient nerd, or if you have a lot of allergies. Also, being an ingredient nerd is not a bad thing at all. So I hope that didn't come off as derogatory. Ingredient nerds are awesome. We need you. Thank you. Now we're going to look inside the palette. There is a nice big mirror in here. And then we have all 10 shades laid out in 2 rows of 5. There is an even split 5 mattes, 5 shimmers, and there are 2 different foiled shadow formulas. We'll get into that more once you see the swatches. Now we're going to do some swatches of this palette. I will show you both finger and brush swatches. As usual, no primer or anything, just the shadows straight onto my skin, finger swatches on top, and then each brush swatch below. So let's take a close-up look at what these shadows look like swatched on my arm. Here are swatches of all 10 shadows. Finger swatches are on top, brush swatches are below, and you can see there's a pretty consistent performance across the finger and brush swatches. One thing to note is that it does seem to be paired up in little duos, so sort of 5 sets of corresponding matte and shimmer duos. Obviously, you don't have to use it that way, but it does seem like Rose Over Bros and Don't Be So Posy are a little monochromatic duo, and then there's a green one and a blue one, so on and so forth. Obviously, this is an easy way to visually break up the palette, but you can use it however you want. Now, I do want to point out in the close-up here, the first 3 shimmers are more of a solid metallic, and then the last 2 shimmers are more of like a shifty, I want to say more topper type of shades because they're not quite as opaque. And the mattes are very, very consistent. You can see in the close-up here, the finger and brush swatches almost indistinguishable from each other. However, the shimmers do seem to apply better with finger swatches. Now that you've seen the palette close-up, you've seen the swatches, let's do a little eyeshadow tutorial using this Bloom palette so you can see what these look like actually in action on the eyelid, and then I'll wrap up all my thoughts at the end. Starting off with a primer first, I've really been into this ColourPop Party Proof primer, and then I am going to set my primer with the setting powder. I don't always do this step, but for a super, super pigmented palette like this, it makes it much easier to blend on top of that base. You don't really need a super sticky base. Now for my transition shade, I'm going to combine the bright pink and the more reddish pink so that I get a nice warm crease color. I want to note that when I am applying these mattes, especially at first, I am using the teeny tiniest little dip into the shadows. You do not need a lot of these. A little bit goes a long way. And I do like to build up because you can always add, but you can't take away. So you can see here with this super dark purple, I'm adding the tiniest bit at a time and layering it up so that I can really control not only the depth, but also the placement. And it just works so well this way. I make sure I take a lot of extra blending steps in between so that everything looks nice and smooth along the way, because these are very pigmented shadows and it's a lot easier to get the placement right the first time than to have to go back and try to fix it. Now I put the blue metallic shade all over, and I'm going to use this topper type of shade. So here's what it looks like, one eye with the topper and one eye without. It adds so much dimensionality. It doesn't really change the color as much as just the amount of shine and texture. I love this once and floral, but you know, it's once and floral. I think that's so cute. I love the puns. I love a good makeup pun. This palette is filled with them, and that is always a bonus for me. Now I'm going to do a little bit of work on the lower lash line, smudging out the more muted matte reddish shade, and then adding just the tiniest bit of extra depth to the outer part of the eye. I'm really just trying to do the finishing touches to bring some balance to the look. And I ended up doing just a little bit of this ColourPop Amethyst Hour liner in the lower waterline. I felt like I needed a little extra pop of color there. This would obviously be great to use with a winged liner and some lashes if that's more your speed. I absolutely love this look, and I love the way all these colors play together. It's so intense, it's so beautiful and inspiring, and I just had a ton of fun creating this. I will say overall I have a very positive opinion of this Bloom palette. I really like the outer packaging design. I like that the shades inside match the colors that we see on the outer packaging. I really love jewel tones like this. I'm a big jewel tone girl. I love that these are all colorful shades. There's a lot of depth. There's a lot of gorgeous shimmer. We do have 2 different shimmer formulas. We have these 3 ultra creamy, super metallic shimmers, and then these 2 more like shifty, less opaque, especially this one. So I love the mix of textures. The mattes are The mattes in here are insanely pigmented. I use the tiniest, teeny tiniest amount of the mattes on my brushes to create the eye look that I'm wearing today. Anytime I use this Bloom palette, you just need the smallest amount. They're so pigmented. They're incredibly rich. Now I think you can tell from the application in the tutorial, despite how pigmented they are, they blended together nicely. They kept all of the color on the eye. When I was mixing the more pinky color and this deeper purple, instead of muddying up and just becoming this all dark, murky, matte mess, they really stayed where I placed them. They stayed true to color, but they still blended together really well. This is the sign of an incredibly high quality matte shadow in my opinion. So I am very happy all around with the performance, the mix of textures, the colors, the packaging. It all works really well for me. The only thing I will say is that I do not recommend this palette to somebody who is more of a beginner or doesn't want to do a more high maintenance type of look. Because you do have to pretty carefully use these, that's the only sort of negative, I guess, is these may not be great for somebody who isn't looking to put in a ton of time on their eyeshadow. However, if you are looking for intense colors, pack-a-punch mattes, really fun mix of metallics, then you're gonna love this palette. Personally, I love it. I am a jewel tone girl. I don't mind spending a little extra time being more precise and doing a little bit of extra blending when it comes to a palette like this that is so beautiful, so rich. It's so opulent, really. That's a great word for this, from the color scheme to the formulas. Maybe it's not right for everybody, but it is definitely right for me. Now's the time when I want to hear what you think about this Bloom palette. Have you checked it out? Did you already order it? Are you waiting for a restock? I always love to hear what you think about things too, so make sure you leave all your thoughts down in the comments below. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye! Try not to make too much noise. Okay, good job. Nailed it. Look at me with my blue eyeshadow. I can't imagine what it must be. Hunky handyman. Metallics. Shimmer. It's just so pretty. It's so pretty. I don't even think I've worn a neutral look on camera this year. So 2 straight months. Maybe one, maybe once. And I could do that all year. I could wear one neutral look every 2 months and I would still get comments like, wow, you're finally trying color. I mostly wear colorful eyeshadow. I mostly wear colorful looks. Maybe it's because I don't do the whole thing with liner and lashes, so it doesn't seem, I don't know what this phenomenon is. I wear so much color and I still get comments all the time about like, oh, you're finally stepping out of your comfort zone. It's like, I wear every color all the time. It's fine. I do love this look though. A lot. Alright, thanks for watching. I love your face. You're so cute. I'm so happy you're here. Thanks for being my friend. As the Golden Girls theme song would say, thank you for being a friend. And I love your face. I'll see you real soon. Okay, bye.